Welcome back to yet another episode of Fly Tying with me, Tellis Katsogiannos, and we're now into episode 10. We've been doing this for 10 weeks in a row now, and we have 2 more to go. So I hope I'm not losing you already. This episode we're going to do zonkers, which for me is not outside of my comfort zone, but I wouldn't say that zonker flies is my first choice, but they are so much fun to tie. And especially depending on, of course, what materials you're using, we're going to use Opossum. And we're going to make one baitfish, and we're going to make a couple of variations of banana with these. I'm going to show you how to cut the zonker strips as well, how to compose the whole fly. And it is a lovely material. You can use it in a lot of different ways, and that's what I'm going to show you. And it's been the Opossum zonker trend has come up the last 5 to 8 years, I would say, and especially the big trendsetters, FutureFly from Denmark, I would say, is the one who really put a lot of energy into making all of these different kind of zonker skins. And it is a very good, easy way to tie a good fly. Everything has pros and cons, and we'll go through that when we start tying. So let's do it. I'm gonna start by tying the salmon fly, the tube fly. And this is what we're gonna create. But before we start tying, I'm gonna show you how we cut the skin, the opossum in this case. And regardless of what kind of skin you have, the cutting technique is more or less the same. It's important to see where the natural fall of the hair is. For example, here you can see that these are going that direction, and this is very nice and straight. So this is the area we mainly will be working in, as you can see. But we'll look closer to that now, how to cut. Here I have locked the skin in this tool that I have from FutureFly. But you can of course use anything else, as long as the skin is not against the table, because when you cut, you will cut off the fibers. So you should always be air beneath or behind it. So you cut a little bit like so, and then you cut another on that side, and then you slowly just go downwards, and you can see you're slowly and gradually making the tip thinner and thinner and thinner. So you need it to have the shape like so. Then you cut it off up here. There's several ways to do this properly, but this I found is pretty simple way. And then you have your wing here. And of course, if you do a lot of those wings prepared, the actual tying of these flies is very, very, very fast. You will see it yourselves now when we start tying. But it's a very, very cool way to tie flies. And you see, those are just ready and waiting for you to start. Okay, we're now done with the zonker wings, and I normally cut, as I said, a lot of them to have ready. Now we have the tube, 1.8 millimeter clear, and then a gold US tube, 10 millimeter. You can of course use different colors here if you want to. Everything is a personal touch. The black one looks very good with banana as well, but I'm going to use the clear one. Here, a drop of glue as usual. Put that all towards the edge there. Prevents it to fall off. Then I'm cutting and having a little bit to work with here. That's why I leave this much. And then put that up on the needle. Okay, for this fly I'm using a relatively light thread. If you want to have, like on this fly, color head, you just choose the thread after that. But we're gonna use a UFO disc afterwards, so I'm just using a classic white thread for this. It's light and hides good between colors. The first thing we're gonna tie on is the dubbing, Salmon signature, fiery brown. It's pretty long, nice fibers. I'm doing this a little bit between my fingers, and then I'm just putting that on. Seeing it's a little bit too much, then I take a little bit off. And as soon as you see it doesn't move really, that means it has locked in. Then from that point you can just keep moving forward. And normally put the scissor in a little bit just to get a few of those longest fiber pulled out. Like so. Okay, now we'll see the beauty of tying with Zonker. When you have the wings ready, it is so fast fly tying. I'm just taking this one now, making sure that it's good in taper and size. I'm just going to cut away a little bit here. Be careful when you're cutting this. It's very easy to cut off the fibers. As you saw when I was cutting with a razor, it's the same thing here then to be careful with. Okay, making sure it has a nice, so it's attached in the right angle so it doesn't turn out to be crooked. And what you can do here now, before you cut, is add just a little bit of glue. And that little piece there, I take the razor and just cut that off carefully. There you go. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of flash, an angel hair with mixed color. Here, it's a very nice one. I'm taking a copper and goldish kind of tone here. And double, 2-3 strands, and then you fold it. Of course, it's personal preference how much flash you want in a fly. The same with this opossum wing. If you want to make it slimmer, you can thin it out a little bit, carefully pulling off fibers in here. Depends on what you want the fly to be in the end. This one, for example, as you can see, has a little bit more dressing or a little bit thicker than this one, but it's easy to cut that out. Okay, now we're gonna add Hackle. In this case, it's soft Hackle patch in a Grizzly yellow, which in my opinion suits this kind of fly very good. I'm cleaning off what I'm not gonna use. Taking those back, pulling those back, and I'm cutting here, creating that attachment point. It's the same as a fox hair or a normal wing. You attach it on that hump and just lock it beneath. Take your scissor, open it. Do not use the cutting edge or the cutting side. You're using the other hard 90-degree inside of the scissor. Put that towards your hackle here, like so, and then slowly pull it. Then you see that all the fibers gets folded. Makes it way easier to have that perfect effect that the hackle is leaning backwards. Pull back, pinch, release every time. And slowly move yourself forward, making sure that nothing is peeking out, no thread or anything. Then I'm attaching it like so and cutting off. There we go. All right, that's it. Now we're gonna add the cheeks to it. We'll make it look a little bit better, even though those are definitely just for our personal amusement, or I don't think that I know for a fact that the salmon doesn't care. Just look at the, as I said before, just look at the classic Sunray shadow. It does not have any young old cock feathers on it, and it fishes really good. But we're adding these because, I mean, it does make the fly look a little bit better. And I'm measuring. Same thing here as with fox hair. The Zonker should be about the wing and hackle, the third thing that I was mentioning before, that hackles should be about 1/3 of the total wing length. Proportions, the same with the cheek feathers here. It should not be too long. It should be somewhat the same length as the hackle. I'll take another one, measuring that. Pulling that off. There are the stuff I'm not going to use. Measuring so they are same length. So, a little bit difficult, that one. Okay, that's the tying part. Now we're gonna finish it by using a little bit of glue on the thread. A few laps and cut it off, and cut those off as well. And now we're coming to the final part, which is adding the head. The US tube in this case is what gives the fly a weight. These kind of discs that we're gonna put on doesn't really have much weight to it, which is this one, the UFO disc. A very nice product from FutureFly, creates a very good shape of the fly. And depending on what you prefer, I like to use these two, or one of them, of course, black nickel or metallic yellow or gold. It looks very good. Then I'm adding a little drip of glue, pushing that towards that, and this is the little trick here, that squeeze that tube like so that you can really push that all the way into the edge. You don't want any space in between the disc or cone head and the hackle or wing. Doesn't really look good. Okay, that's it. You see, you can create a very nice taper. Most of the times Opossum flies or Zonker flies has a tendency to be more suitable for larger flies. It's a little bit difficult to cut perfect tapered wings with these kind of materials, but from about 5 centimeters and up, in my opinion, it's a very, very, very nice material. I'm cutting that off and I'm burning that edge there. And then we're gonna come and I'm gonna show you the baitfish as well. This material is not just suitable for salmon flies, you can use it for other stuff as well. And here, as you see the difference, I'm just gonna show you the difference between having a UFO disc on or not, depending on what you prefer. The weight is in the US tube. There's the weight. I'm creating that. But now we're gonna do the baitfish, and it's a very good one. For this fly, I'm using a pretty wide gap hook, and this is Partridge Attitude. It's a very, very nice streamer hook for especially big baitfish flies or predator flies, due to the fact that this is very wide and it's a strong hook, as you can see. Okay, now I'm starting with attaching the thread, a white one. We're not going all the way back, and I'm adding a little bit of glue here. This fly is also a very, very simple one, but it is really efficient for big trout. Salmon signature dub, gray eyes in color. I'm cutting that off a little bit, and spinning that together. I'm pinching that on, and just as usual, here you can see how this dubbing technique, of course, can be used on regular streamers and such as well. It's very, very efficient way to dub. Takes a few flies before you nail it. If you're interested in this, you can watch the episode about dubbing techniques that I made about 6 or 7 years ago. Even though it's in Swedish, you will see the techniques. Now we're gonna take a different color of the opossum skin, natural, uncolored, which is a very nice color for baitfish. This white, gray, grizzly kind of tone. I'm just adjusting, as you can see here, to make it a little bit easier to attach, so that's not too broad. I'm putting that there, making sure it's relatively straight. It's fine if it is a little bit crooked, it just makes the fly move a little bit weird and different, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when we're imitating a baitfish. Predators tend to chase the prey that's weak. Okay, now we're gonna add a little bit of flash, but before that you can see that this one is a little bit shorter than the fly we just tied, And you can see that directly the taper is not really as good as last time. So what I want to do here, I don't want to cut in natural material, but you can pull a little bit of this off if you want to thin it out. There you go. In my opinion, you see the difference in taper just by pulling off a little bit of those fibers. Same flash for this one. The mixed one with a lot of different colors in it. I'm taking a little bit more due to the fact that this is a bait fish. I want it to be a little bit more flashy. Something like that. A little bit chaos in my hand here. There we go. One too much there. Since we are folding this double, it's easy to take a little bit too much if you don't consider the fact that we are doubling it when we're folding it. Okay, make sure that the strands are not identical in length, because they will stick together and not move properly. Here we go. Okay, the next step is the hackle, and we're using the same kind, or rooster saddle, depends on what you prefer. Both of the rooster saddle and soft tackle patch has a similar kind of structure, or the total effect of it is very much the same. But of course the feather, it looks quite different from each other, but they give the same amount of filling in the hackle, in my opinion. Stroking back what I want to use, something like that, and I'm cutting away what I don't want to use. And I'm attaching it. Remember the feather's natural form or bend. As you can see, this feather has the convex side towards me, which means that the feather is bent and pointing that way. I don't want it to be facing me, because when we're hackling, that means that the fibers, instead of laying like this, like we did on the salmon flies, the hackle will be pointing forward, which is not what we want. There, like so. Doubling it again and putting this tight towards each other. So as you can see, this tying technique, I mean, we're more or less tying a salmon fly now. But we're gonna put epoxy eyes on it, creating a bait fish. There we go, and cut that off. You can go fishing with the fly as it is, like this. It will work beautifully. But in my opinion, when you're making a fish imitation, you should use eyes, because a lot of predators or big predator fish tend to strike over the head. So if you don't have any eyes there, I don't know, it feels better to have the eyes on if you're fishing with fish imitation or bait fish. It just makes it feel better. I'm putting these on. This is like a sticker, so it will help stay there a little bit while we work, but it will not be enough, of course, for fishing. You need to add glue to this. And what I want to do now with the hackle, before I drip the glue, is I want to hold the hackle in the way that I want it to be glued. So I'm pinching all of this together, and then I'm taking the Loctite and dripping in here. Move around and drop here, and then I'm just carefully pushing that in. A little bit glue behind, and then you carefully take the plastic from the glue and just tap it a little bit so you see that it's stuck. This is definitely enough for going out fishing if you're stressed and like are ready to go. The problem with this though, this will not last very long. The fly will break way faster if you don't add epoxy or UV glue to the head, which I will show you now. It's better to let that dry a little bit first. The risk of getting the fly milky is increasing what I'm doing right now, which is putting it on right away. But it's a good thing to show you that let it rest a little bit before. That is the best way to go. But I'm going to show you that this works as well, because sometimes it is like that. We're tying that panic fly before we're running out fishing. So then you take your needle after you just put all that glue on. Then I'm taking the needle and shaping the head here. When you're doing this with epoxy, it's also pretty easy to work with. But you have to mix a lot, and within 10-15 minutes that glue will not be usable because it is hardened. The UV glue is easier in the way that you can make one fly at a time and don't have to stress about anything, because this will not cure until you cure it with your UV pen, or if you run out in the sunshine. So I'm glowing with this UV pen or UV light. It makes that harden right away. If you find that your UV glue doesn't get rock hard, or if it gets a little bit milky, it might not be the UV glue's fault. It might be your pen, that the frequency in the light is not good enough for that glue, or the other way around, of course. Like so. All right. It's a very fast and simple baitfish. Imitates. You can change the colors and stuff. This is a very good all-around baitfish imitation made with the epoxy, or with the Opossum and the UV glue here. The cool thing about Opossum as a material, when it is wet, it does remind you a little bit of a polar bear, because it gets a little bit translucent. So it's a very, very cool material. I hope you liked this episode, and if you need any materials, or if you want to try out this kind of flies, there's a link in the description where you can get a package to tie about 10-15 of these flies if you want to try it out. See you next time.